Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Angels at Essex Female Founders and Investor meeting, obviously from the month of March. Sorry, just thinking, which month are we in? We are in March. So yeah, welcome, everybody. This is sponsored by the Essex County Council. So just wanted to throw that out there. And also, if you wanted to tweet about us, we have our hashtag on the side. The Twitter hashtag is at FE or AEFFI. I'm Magdalena. I'm from the Weave. I've been working with the University of Essex as well as an entrepreneur in residence for the last almost 5 years now. And at the Weave, we are an enterprise educator, and my background originally is all in marketing and advertising before I started my own business and went the entrepreneurial kind of route, and then landed at the Weave back in 2019. And yeah, we run loads of programs for Colby, for Essex County Council, for the university as well. Just finished the iTeams program at the university. We run accelerators as well for Colby and Essex County Council. So that's just in a nutshell, that's me. All right, then we're gonna jump straight in. Into our, is there anything that you'd like to feedback on? Was there any kind of insights that you guys came up with in your breakout rooms?
I think we noticed that we can very, very quickly as female founders and supports and things like that, that we can all very, very easily support each other, and we all have knowledge to share. Yeah, it was just a really good session. And I know personally that I've made 2 really great contacts just out of that very short conversation. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, no, we had some really good discussions actually about sort of fundraising and grants, and potentially sort of exchanging some contacts on there. So super helpful. Yeah, it's just always good to network with other founders as well. And yeah, really good. Thank you.
Without further ado, though, let me quickly introduce our very first speaker of today, the lovely Frances Spooner from Marriott Harrison, sorry. Fran is a partner in Marriott Harrison's corporate team and has been with the firm for over a decade. She advises clients from a range of different sectors on corporate and corporate finance matters, including venture capital, venture debt, private equity, and M&A. And I believe also that she is a recommended lawyer in the Legal 500 for venture capital and M&A. So I don't want to give too much away. So over to you, Fran.
Yeah, so as Magdalena said, I'm a corporate partner at a law firm called Marriott Harrison. So just to start off on who we are. So as I said, some more information on me and my firm, Marriott Harrison. So Marriott Harrison, as you said, is a specialist business law firm, which effectively means we do everything on the legal side for companies rather than individuals. So we don't do any family law, say, or criminal or private client. And within the firm, we've got 6 departments. So I'm in the corporate team, and we do mainly transactional work. We also have a property team, commercial, who do commercial contracts and IP, banking and finance and restructuring, employment, and dispute resolution. And as mentioned, we're also recognised in the legal directories as a top tier firm for venture capital, which is hopefully relevant for most of the people on this call. So the next few slides, as I said, I'll just kind of briefly breeze through, but hopefully you can read in your own time, but it just provides a bit more information on the different departments that we have and the different services that we can provide. So probably most relevant for the people on this call is our work for startups, and perhaps in particular seed funding rounds, which would be pretty early stage. So the firm does work with all sorts of companies, and we work with companies, kind of one-man band companies all the way up to multinationals. Our sweet spot is probably SMEs, but we do work with a lot of early stage startup companies, and that's probably what I do most of the time, day to day at the moment. So for instance, for a startup, we could help the company incorporate, so filings with Companies House. We could help with a pre-seed round or seed round, and even later. We can help establish an option pool, for instance, and we can help with commercial contracts with customers as well. We're also affiliated with various accelerator programs, incubators and platforms, a bit like Angel at Essex. And so we have a really good understanding of what startups need and the pressures that founders are under. And we try to tailor our approach as much as possible and try and be dynamic to meet each person's individual needs and their company's requirements. So moving on from seed funding, you might have heard of Series A rounds before, which is basically just later stage and often more money provided by an institutional investor. So we also do a lot of work at that stage as well. Some recent examples of what I've done. Acted for a fund called Red Alpine, and they invested at Series A stage into a fintech company called 9fin, and also into a company called Better Dairy, who have developed alternatives to dairy produce, which is quite interesting. Also acted on the investment by North Zone and Lightspeed Ventures into a company called HeyGo, which basically does virtual travel. And I actually used their platform during COVID, and it was really great actually. So I recommend you visit their site. The next slide shows a selection of companies that we've worked for. So you might recognize some of them. For instance, Deliveroo. We didn't actually act for Deliveroo, unfortunately, but we acted on the deal in which they got investment. Oaxaca, you might recognize, Honest Brew, Planet Organic. And then on the fund side, we've worked for some of Europe's biggest funds like Bolton Capital, Axel, and North Zone. I thought I'd pick out one in particular called Ampliance. That's a really good example of a company that we've worked with from the very start of their journey all the way up to they recently completed a Series D round. And that's a perfect sort of client that we've worked for a decade. And it's really great to have that sort of long-term relationship. So just very briefly, some information about me. As mentioned, I'm a partner in Merritt Harrison's corporate team. I've done a whole range of different corporate work and corporate finance work. So M&A, private equity, but most recently, and what I focus on now is venture capital investments for both companies and investors. Personally, I'm very keen to build a practice that focuses on helping women. I've not had much experience in that just because of the nature of the corporate world, so I really want to focus on it. And then also founders and companies that have some sort of wider impact. I'm recommended in the directories, as Magdalena kindly mentioned, and I'm also proud to lead Merritt Harrison's corporate social responsibility program, which ties in with the sort of work that I want to do. Some recent transactions I've worked on. We acted for a fintech company called Circa 5000 on its seed round with Ada Ventures, and also a crowdfunding round that they did with Crowdcube really recently. We've also acted for an impact fund called Bethnal Green Ventures on its merger with Connected Asset Management, which hopefully means they have more funds to invest into different companies with a focus on impact, which is brilliant. So just from a personal perspective, very briefly on my path to partnership. So I've, as mentioned, I've been with the firm for 11 years now. I trained with them and qualified into the corporate department. And then I was promoted to partner very recently, so in October 2021, I think, after 9 years of being qualified as a lawyer. So some things that I've learned along the way, which I think hopefully can be applied to everyone in business or other professional advisors. It's important to set boundaries. I've not been great at that in the past, but I've learned that it's really important. So saying no to perhaps an investor that doesn't align with your values, or a customer, for instance, that doesn't align. Working on things that don't maximize your time, and sacrificing other things at the expense of work. I think be clear about what you want to achieve and just follow that. Find out what you enjoy and do more of that. So I think from a very practical perspective, just trying to plan your day so that you do something each day that you really enjoy and that energizes you. So whether that's having meetings with people, doing networking, having loads of calls, I find that just helps you enjoy your job firstly, and helps you maintain productivity. Maintain balance as much as possible. So I'm trying to think of my career as a marathon rather than a sprint. Can I maintain the current pace that I'm at? And it you know, applies to businesses as well. Can you maintain it for decades rather than just weeks? Take measured risks. Again, I've not been very good at this in the past, but you know, try to avoid being perfect at everything. Take risks when you can and challenge yourself, and don't be scared of failure. And finally, be a team player. Can't do it all on your own. And I think this is especially true of founders who can often take on so much and think that it all has to sit with them. So say often people usually have co-founders, which is great, but if you don't, try and join relevant events and talks, go to groups that are relevant to your sector and industry, and just meet people that you can talk to about your company and your journey. Going into a little bit more detail quickly about how we can help, so me as a corporate lawyer, and also my firm as a business law firm. And the reason I thought that this was important is that I think that the corporate world can often seem quite detached, or you know, corporate advisory work can seem quite detached. But actually, if you think about it, most companies have similarities, whether that's because they have shares, they have shareholders, or they have employees, accounts, tax to pay. So it doesn't matter, and it certainly doesn't matter from my perspective whether it's a very, very small company or a very, very big company. They all have similarities. So the best way to describe what I do and what a business law firm does is to just go through the life cycle of a corporate client. So I might meet a female founder at a networking event like this platform, and we exchange details. The founder could then get in touch because they want to set up a private limited company. So Marriott Harrison as the firm could deal with the company incorporation, and I would do that on the corporate side. And we could also act as company secretary for the company, which is basically more on the administrative side. The founder then realizes they need some money. Obviously, eventually everyone will come to that conclusion. They need to hire employees, they need to find a premises, and they want to develop and sell their product to customers. So Marriott Harrison and me on the corporate side could deal with the investment documents, and my team in the firm could deal with the contracts for employees, the lease of the new premises, commercial contracts with customers, and also protecting the company's intellectual property. So Marriott Harrison, ideally, and this is the best way to work with people we find, continue to work with the company as it grows. So it might receive different funding from different investors as it grows. It then takes on more employees at different levels, and it also might then issue shares to management. Perhaps it needs to put in place data protection policies. And unfortunately, it might fall out with certain customers who don't pay their invoices, for instance, and the dispute resolution team could deal with that. So after a decade or so of hard work, and we've worked with the company that whole time, late nights, ups and downs, the founder decides they need to change and wants to sell the company, whether that's a sale of the shares or the assets. So Marriott Harrison could assist with the sale process, and that would be me on the corporate side. And the founder goes off to start the next phase of their life. So just a very practical kind of, because I think it can seem quite daunting in a way to instruct the lawyer. And I know I felt like this on the kind of personal side when I've been instructing property lawyers, say. But just to try and kind of break it down in terms of process. So when, why, and how would you instruct a corporate lawyer? So when, I would say this, but I'd say the sooner the better. And there's never a harm in making initial inquiries, and we obviously can't charge you, and we wouldn't charge you from just an introductory phone call. Why? I'd say to put in place protection at the outset against issues arising down the line. So I would like to think of it as like a prenup arrangement for your business. So say there's two shareholders. It's much better to have a shareholders agreement in place from the outset, which says, you know, if we fall out or if someone gets ill, this is how we'll deal with it. From a very kind of practical perspective, just to ensure that you and your business are complying with relevant laws. Also, if we're instructed from the outset, it's great because we get to know you and your business inside out. And also it can help you grow. So if you've got in place really solid investment documents or articles or a shareholders agreement, or you put in place really solid employment contracts, it can actually help your business grow because you've got a really good basis from which to go. So how? Literally just send an email, have a call, and as I said, there's no charge or obligation at that point. You'd formally instruct us to act on a particular matter, and then we'd onboard you as a client. And at that point, we'd agree a definitive scope of work and a fee. So hopefully it's not as scary as it might seem. And then finally, just because of the audience on the call and what you're all involved in or hopefully will be involved in at some point, I thought it'd be helpful to do a very brief overview of VC investments. So firstly, who are the parties? Obviously, you've got the investors. So on any deal, that could be either individual investors or angels, or it could be institutional investors, or perhaps a mix of the two. And you often have a lead investor who leads the negotiations, and then the other investors might follow. Founders would also be party to the transaction. Usually, as you know, they'll be the people that set up the company. There might be one or more of them, and they often tend to have different roles. The target company would also be party, so that's the company receiving the funds and issuing the shares. And there might also be existing shareholders, so friends and family that have perhaps put in money and received shares, or it could also be an accelerator program if they've been an investor in the company, or perhaps a crowdfunding investor. So just to run through some of the typical documents you might see. You might have all heard of a term sheet, especially if you've done an investment round before. So that's non-binding legal, a summary of the legal terms that you then find in the main documents for the investment. Articles of Association, which are often just known as articles for short. That's a constitutional document which sets out the management and administrative structure of the company. So that's things like issuing and transferring shares, the board composition, and paying dividends. It's a contract between the company and each of its shareholders, and it's a public document that you file with Companies House, so anyone can find it on Companies House. Subscription and shareholders agreement, often known as an investment agreement, although it can be split into two. That sets out the main terms of the investment, so the subscription by the investor, and also rights and obligations of the respective parties, so things like information rights, consent matters, warranties, for instance. It only binds the parties to it, so the people that have signed it. And in most cases, it's a private agreement, so it's not filed at Companies House and people can't access it. Disclosure letter is one that we get asked about quite a lot because unless you've been involved with a round, you probably haven't come across this document before. So as part of the subscription and shareholders agreement, investors will often ask for warranties, which are factual statements about the company, the founders, and the business. As part of that, investors will usually agree with the warrantors that the warrantors will not be liable for a breach of warranty, where the matter giving rise to the breach was disclosed in the disclosure letter. So as an example, there might be a warranty that says the company is not involved in any litigation. If the company is involved in litigation, that could be a breach of the warranty. But if the warrantors have disclosed in the disclosure letter all of the details of the litigation, then they wouldn't be liable for the breach. So it's basically protection for the company and the founders. IP assignments tend to be very relevant for tech-heavy companies. Investors, because it goes to the value of the business, they want to be assured that any intellectual property belongs to the company and not the individuals. So founders and key employees will assign intellectual property to the company. Founders service agreements, similarly, a lot of value is placed in the founders and the value that they bring to the company. So investors often want to put in place either amended or new service agreements, which contain things like full intellectual property provisions, confidentiality provisions, and restrictive covenants. And finally, corporate authorizations, which are sometimes known as just ancillaries, things like shareholder resolutions, board minutes, and investor consents. So moving on now to due diligence, which again, is a term that you might have heard of if you've gone through a round or if you've been involved in the VC world generally. But it's just a term to describe an exercise undertaken by investors to basically investigate the company, the business, and the founders. It's effectively risk mitigation for the investors because they want to know that everything they think about the company and the things that they've been told are actually true. It can include legal, DD, which is what the lawyers like I would get involved in, financial and commercial. And there might also be specialist areas. For instance, if a company is particularly heavy on licensing, there might be specialists that would look into things like that. So the process for DD is that an investor sends out a questionnaire. Founders provide answers and relevant documents. The investor reviews those, and there might be a further round of questions. The lawyers acting for the investor prepare a report, which they then give to the investor, and the investor uses that report to finalize their internal approval process. As part of that, if there's any material issues uncovered, an investor might unfortunately pull out. They might reduce their investment, or they might query the valuation of the company and the price per share. If there are much more minor or practical issues identified, which is much more common, they'll either ask to deal with those before or after completion of the round. And there might be like a time frame, you need to sort it out within 3 months of closing or something like that. So finally, moving on to timing. We typically find it varies from deal to deal, but often takes between 4 and 6 weeks from signing a term sheet to close the deal. So the steps involved, very briefly, term sheet signed, the lawyers are instructed on the investor side to start due diligence and prepare the investment documents. Questions are sent to the company to complete. The investment documents, once prepared, are circulated and then negotiated between the lawyers. Any further questions are circulated and the due diligence report is prepared. Things like the disclosure letter, the ancillaries, and the other documents are prepared and negotiated. Once that's done, all of the documents are agreed and they're sent out for signing, which is nowadays usually done by DocuSign. Once all of the signatures have been received and the parties have agreed to complete, monies are transferred to the company, which is usually done direct. Once the company's received the monies, the shares are allotted. And once all that has been done, lawyers conduct some post-completion actions, things like filing to a company's house. So that has been a very, very high level run through VC investments. And there's obviously areas that we could go into a lot more detail, but hopefully that's been helpful as just to kind of fly through the basics. Are there any questions on any of it?
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Fran. That was, I thought it was really, really, really useful to see that overview and to just, get a little bit of an overview, like at least you have a point of reference to then have further conversations on and things like that.
I would like to know from this sort of due diligence, I can't even say it properly, point of view, where you think the biggest gaps are on proving out the forecasting bits and pieces. I have there's a reason why I asked that, because I'm just trialing a particular product which actually supports that. So it'd be interesting to know where the gaps are, where you guys see and the angels see where the gaps are in actually proving out those forecasting and where the business is going to go.
Do you mean in terms of the finances?
I'm not sure about finances. I'm talking about business strategy, business development, business strategy, and how that moves forward. Because we can all very easily say, right, okay, we've got to here. This is what we're doing. This is where we project that to. But it's all a little sort of finger in the air, isn't it? So I'm trying to we're creating a product at the moment, and it's about making sure that isn't just a finger in the air and sort of seeing where the wind's blowing, but actually giving some rigor to that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we wouldn't usually get involved in things like the forecasting or business plans or pitch decks or budgets. That tends to be things that are done behind the scenes in my experience, the the founders and either their financial advisors or their accountants. So we're often just told, you know, this is the valuation that we've come to. This is therefore the price per share, you know, please go away and do the legal stuff. But in my experience, it is often a bit of a finger in the air. And it's obviously based on various things that then tie into that, like market competitors. And, you know, that there probably are some points that you can actually reference that you can then justify and say, well, it's not just a finger in the air, this, you know, it's this because of X, Y, and Z. But to kind of know the precise ins and outs, I think it would be more on a kind of a question for an accountant or a financial advisor. Sorry about that.
No, that gives me, that's as, you know, getting a no is a brilliant answer. or no. The worst answer anybody can give me is a maybe. So yes or no, perfectly brilliant. So no, that gives me some really good ideas and sort of where I can find out that relevant information. So thank you. That's really useful.
I mean, I do know plenty of accountants that deal with things like valuations. So if you wanted me to put you in contact, that would be totally fine.
That would be absolutely amazing. Having a good understanding of that is really useful. Thank you so much.
I think the general answer is, if you're talking about numbers, lawyers probably aren't the people to go to.
I love that.
Just have to be honest.
Interestingly, so I'm on here because of Bid & Stay. So we're developing some auction software for selling unsold accommodation, basically the sort of last minute stuff. So I would like to have a chat to you about that. I also came up with another business idea a couple of weeks ago, which seems to have gone a bit nuts. And I don't know if it's something, and it's completely different. It's something that I wanted for my dog, and it's a travel dog bed. Well,
yes, awesome.
It's super lightweight, it's waterproof, it looks really cool. I stuck something onto a Facebook group and I've had over 200 people wanting to buy it now. And I'm suddenly like, well, and I suddenly thought I need to look into the legals of this to make sure that if a dog happens to chew it, and how do we make sure, is that something you can get involved in, or even the kind of protection to make sure that we can't get sued or something like that if we're sending this to market?
Yeah, certainly things like the terms and conditions on which you would sell that product. That's certainly things that we could look into. And if you required, because that kind of sounds like quite a niche product in a way, if you needed very niche advice, then we would, if we couldn't specifically deal with it in-house at Merritt Harrison, we would be able to, you know, refer you to people that could. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's not something I was expecting to do, but I can't believe the demand for it. So I figured there's a local woman who can make them all up, and so it gives her a full-time job. And
wow.
Yeah, well, I just, it's the legal side that's worrying me, so I'll be in touch about that.
Yeah, definitely, that's totally fine. And I'm a dog owner, so I would definitely want to be one of your customers.
Brilliant, great.
That's always the thing about being an entrepreneur. We always come up with new ideas and then we just make it happen.
And do you know what, that's what I've learned it's all about. You can come up with the ideas. I came up with Bid & Stay about 5 years ago, and we're launching in 4 weeks now, and it feels like a lifetime of building this thing. But yeah,
persevering there, because a lot of people don't persevere that long for a long time. So
and I think that's just it, isn't it? Yeah, I was saying on the call earlier, it's all about, everything takes double what you think it's going to take.
Is it that it's all project based, so you would the fee would be agreed on whatever the need at that moment, or is it kind of like almost like a subscription where you have legal advice? Like, for example, with my accountant, I'm on a more or less, it's spread out through the entire year rather than paying once a year. But that means also I can get in touch at any point if I have questions. We
can offer both types of fee models. So if it's a sort of thing where you think you would have questions on a regular basis and we'd need to do work on a regular basis, then we can, of course, you know, have a retainer fee structure, like you say. But we do tend to find that people get in contact with us on specific jobs, and then we'll quote for that job at the time. But we're very flexible, so it just depends.
So now we're gonna jump to our next lovely speaker of today. So that's Rosemary O'Connor. She's from the Department for International Trade. Let me just quickly, and she's an international trade advisor at that Department for International Trade. She manages a portfolio for over 150 premium food and drink producers, helping them to build the international sales. She herself grew up in a family food business that was established back in 1890, and she has contributed to its growth from 4 employees to over 200. She's also worked as a senior brand manager with Kipling Cakes and Lyon made, I'm not sure whether it's English or French, made ice cream, driving sales in Europe and Asia. But I don't want to talk too much about all that because I'm sure she's going to introduce herself as well.
I'd like to thank you for inviting me along today to give you an overview of the Department for International Trade in the East of England. What I'd like you to have by the end of this presentation is I'd like you to know a little bit about the performance of exporters in the East of England. Secondly, I'd like you to know about the Department for International Trade, who we are, how we can be of value to you. And finally, I'd like to share some insights and chunks of wisdom that I've gleaned from other exporters in the region with you. So, kicking off, overview of the East of England in terms of export performance, and these are the most recent stats that I have basically. So in 2020, the East of England exported 26.7 billion worth of goods. Now, you might say, so what? Well, that actually makes us the 3rd best performing region in the UK, and there are 15 regions. In terms of services, we exported 18.9 billion worth of services, making us the 5th largest performer in the East of England. For your information, there are 26,900 businesses in the East of England that export. Now, the purpose of this slide really is, you'll see there's a little red blob on the map there, and that's the East of England. And I want you to know that exporters in this region have been performing very well. And in my speak, I would say they're punching above their weight. So moving on. In terms of the key sectors which export in the East of England, I've listed them all there. It's automotive, it's healthcare and medical equipment, it's biotech and farm, it's ICT, it's creative and media. Now I've highlighted food and drink because I specialize in the food and drink sector, and food and drink export about 1.64 billion a year from this region. Now, I have colleagues that deal in the other sectors, but you know, as has already been said, I touch in with about 150 food and drink companies in the region, and quite a number of them are actually run by women, I'm pleased to tell you. And it's an absolute privilege for me to be involved with those businesses. They're exciting, they're dynamic, they're doing lots of interesting things. And you'll know some of the big food and drink exporters in our region. We've got Tiptree, we've got Green King, Maldon Salts, we've got Stoke Sauces. You probably know Wicks Manor and Fairfield Crisps because they're just out the road from Colchester. We've got the English Whiskey Company, and we've got James White Drinks, to mention but a few. So moving on, who are we and what do we do? The Department for International Trade are a government department, but in a nutshell, we help businesses sell products and services abroad. And we do this through our UK international trade advisors, of which I am one. There are 30 in the East of England. And, you know, our role really is, you know, to act as a sounding board, to give impartial advice, to work with a business on their export strategy. More importantly, though, we have our commercial staff in 108 countries throughout the world. That's in our British embassies, consulates and high commissions. And they help businesses find distributors, agents, retailers, do research, work out the best route to market. And, you know, often companies find having the British embassy representing them in a particular country to a buyer has a lot more clout than being sort of ABC company from Essex. In addition to our boots on the ground, we have contacts with overseas business networks. They'd be consultants, they'd be the British Chambers of Commerce, and we frequently signpost clients to these organizations. In terms of how specifically we can help, the first thing I mentioned is developing and implementing a successful international strategy. Now, that's a key part of my role. And, you know, why might that be important? Well, you know, frequently I have businesses coming to me saying, oh, we want to target the Far East. We want to target Africa. We want to do the States. We want to do China. These are all big, massive markets with lots of individual countries within them with specific requirements. And our role is very much around helping a business focus and use their scarce resource to get the best bang for their buck. Now, what helps us to do this is we have a tool called our country selection tool. And that helps a business to identify maybe the best markets for their products. And I call this the best horses to back, basically. And we would have a market researcher who get behind the factors that would drive demand for their product in a particular country, and also look at what might make it easy for them in a particular country, and then rate all the countries accordingly. Now, we charge for that service. It's a subsidized product. And it's £500, but it's a good entry point for a business. So number 3, I mentioned market research. You've done your initial country selection. You've got it down to 2 or 3 countries. You now need to start to ask lots of questions to work out if that market really is appropriate for you. You know, it often starts with, you know, understanding the price points. Can you turn a profit? Can you turn a margin when you factor in all the costs? Do you have a USP? What are the best routes to market? Now, our commercial staff in our British embassies will help businesses with market research. Assuming you get the green light on all of that, the next piece is finding the right contacts. Our teams in our commercial offices will help with that to an extent. But if you're looking for a beauty parade of distributors, or you're looking for specific introductions, we do charge at subsidized rates. Number 5, I have to mention grants. Since I've been involved in the business since 2013, there's always been some sort of a grant knocking around. Now, at the moment, we're coming to the end of the internationalization fund, but it's still available in this region only to businesses in Essex. And it means that a business can spend up to £18,000 on export-related activity and reclaim 50%. It's a match funding grant. And, you know, I think grants are great. Everybody does. But, you know, it would take, you know, you'd have to sell a lot of stuff to add 9,000 net profit to your figures. In addition, from time to time, we have grants for shows and exhibitions. Number 6 up there is training. Now, training is very important for a new exporter. It helps them to really decide whether they're export ready or not. And what we've got is the Export Academy. And this is free. We've got 8 modules on exporting, you know, ranging from 1 on market research, 1 on distributors, 1 on pricing, 1 on Incoterms. You know, I would recommend that to anybody that is looking to export. And, you know, I'll include in the chat all the links to the things I'm talking about today. Number 7, internationalizing your website. Now, this is more relevant to somebody who's a bit further down the line. But why worry about internationalizing your website? Well, we find it's the first place that distributors or agents or retailers go to look at a client. And there's lots of things you can do to make yourself look international. We have a digital advisor who will advise on all of that. But in simple terms, it could be putting British in your address, your 0044 number, using some British colours on your website, including some customers you're already dealing with that are known internationally. Number 8, still e-marketplaces, which again are still about the whole online side. Amazon is a very good example of an online marketplace, but there are many more marketplaces throughout the world, and DIT have negotiated special terms with a number of e-marketplaces. And again, I will put the link to that in the chat as it could be relevant. Number 9, export sales leads. We upload free sales leads to our website all the time. They can be for any market with respect to any product sector. Again, you can register for these and you can set up alerts so you get alerted if anything comes in for your product category. Again, I'll include the link to that in the chat. Number 10, UK export finance. Now, I'm mentioning that because there may be some funders, finance people in the audience. And UK Export Finance are our partners, and what they'll do is they'll provide credit insurance in markets where the private sector won't deal, high-risk marketplaces. And they also provide collateral for working capital for export loans. Number 11, I couldn't end on our services and products without mentioning something foodie. We have a LinkedIn food and drink group in the region, which is for food and drink exporters or people who are interested in exporting. There's about 250 companies in the group. Some of them will be known to you. It's a place where companies can share ideas and best practice, but I also upload any opportunities or buying leads that I come across there all the time. I'm also going to mention our buyer-seller platform, England's finest. Now, this is for more experienced exporters. It's a B2B platform which puts buyers and sellers in touch with each other. Yeah, it's quite a successful platform. So moving on to my final area, I want to share with you some comments and insights and learnings from local exporters. Now, these come mainly from food and drink companies, but I think they're actually applicable to a lot of sectors. So first up, and I am going to read these to you, exporting has really helped us raise our game. Now, we find that over and over again. Companies who export, it stretches them more. And as a result, they become more innovative, more successful, and more profitable. Now, up to now in the presentation, I've talked to you a lot about the how and what of exporting. I haven't really spoken to you about the why, but there are good reasons why businesses should look at exporting. Number one, it can increase profitability, more volume, etc. But you know, we often find in certain categories that companies can attain better margins and better profits in certain markets, and that's often a reason why people export. Another reason that people export is the market in the UK is saturated, and they need to look elsewhere. Another reason for exporting is smoothing demand and seasonality. The extreme example, northern, southern hemisphere, an ice cream company sells ice cream at a different time in the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. But exporting can really help smooth the demand. And of course, exporting, the other reason companies export is for prestige reasons, to build reputation, to build credibility. So next up, this little gem from one of our clients. If you can max out first on the UK market, it is usually the easiest and cost-effective market to go for. Now that's a rule of thumb. It's not true in all cases, but you know, the amount of companies I have who come to me, they're just selling in Essex, or they're just selling in Suffolk, and they want to export. You know, they've got the whole of the UK market still to go for. And it doesn't always seem like the best use of resource when they've got a market on their doorstep. They go on to say, yeah, it's on your doorstep, and building sales first with a UK business that is well known internationally will stand you in good stead when you put your toe in the water internationally. So get under your belt some companies that are well known, is what they're saying, and that will really help you. So the next chunk of wisdom I've got is, when exporting, be targeted and concentrate on a few markets that work and grow your foothold. Pick companies where you can gain traction quickly and get the best bang for your buck. Now, the country selection tool I showed you earlier is all about that. It's all about getting you to focus and, you know, getting you to move away from this assumption that one size actually fits all. So next up, I've got, be prepared to do your homework. Every country is different. And as I've just said, one size doesn't fit all. So there's plenty of homework to be done. There's plenty of research to be done. Some companies think that everything's going to be the same abroad as it is in the UK, and that's not the case. And you know, I have examples of big international companies who've messed up on this. We had one company who was launching a perfume called Mist in Germany. Now, mist in German translates into manure, and there's another word I could use, which I won't. We also, there's another major international company, Vauxhall Nova. Vauxhall were launching their Vauxhall Nova in Spanish-speaking countries. But Nova translates into Spanish as no-go. So you had Vauxhall no-go. So everybody needs to basically do their homework. Right, I really like this little gem because I think this is one of the first things one should be thinking about in terms of your research. So research your price points early on and work backwards, allowing for retailer margin, distributor or agent markup, freight costs, tariff, insurance. You know, you can work out, you can get the price points. Usually if you're in food and drink or retail, you could easily do some research, get the price points, work backwards, get a spreadsheet, add in all your costs, and work out pretty much upfront whether there is a business model there for you, whether there is a margin. Right. Yeah, this is a good nugget. It won't happen overnight. There's no magic formula. Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes people get lucky, but usually it takes at least 12 to 18 months. It's a long-term commitment. You can't approach it half-hearted. You've got to allocate time and resource. And, you know, sometimes companies are lucky and they do it on a shoestring. But, you know, I would say if you're looking to add an additional 100,000 or 500,000 from export to your sales, you've got to be prepared to maybe think about an investment. Is it going to be 1%, 2%, 3%? But a budget is important. The key thing is having someone on the team who is dedicated and passionate and an export champion. Now that could be you, the business founder, But, you know, if you really put the foot to the gas on export, I'd expect you to be spending maybe 2 to 3 days a week on it. It is time consuming, but the results can be well worth it. And finally, I've got this little statement. We have been amazed just how interested foreign companies are in UK products. The UK has a reputation for trust and integrity. The historic ties with many countries create opportunities. You know, for some countries, being a British product is actually part of their USP. Britain is a brand, the UK is a brand in itself. So what I've shared with you there are some comments and insights from successful exporters in our region. So look, I've spoken to you about the performance of businesses in the east of England. I've run through who we are and how I think we could be of value. And I've shared some insights and learnings from exporters in the region. I'd like to leave you with some contact details and invite any questions. Thank you.
That was very insightful. I thought, yeah, I've never really, well, me personally thought about exporting that much, but I think we overlook it oftentimes because there is so much potential within that. I've worked for another company who are exporting, and yeah, there's so much in it. So thank you for all that information. I thought that was really, really useful and really helpful. Emma, I will see your travel dog mat will be an export product too. Or could be, you know, just food for thought, Emma.
Kind of related, but not related, because I've been trying to find this out. I hear you on exports. Is there any support on people who are importing as well from the department, or is it purely just focused on exports? And if so, where can I find them? Because I haven't been able to.
That's a very good question. Our focus is on Department for International Trade. Our focus is on bringing revenue into this country from other countries. Now, importing takes money out of this country, basically. So that's not really an area that we would support, really. What specifically are you looking for the funding for? What I'm just wondering, are there other support organizations that can help you in the business support world?
Potentially, and this is what I'm asking. It's actually for my daughter. She has her own salon, but she does hair extensions, and she's wanting to create a business here as a wholesaler for that. But that's going to take some particular funding. So we're kind of asking for her to find out whether there's any help or support or funding or grants or anything like that, and where I might be able to find them if that is the case. But it's an Essex based. So
yes. I mean, has she approached any of the enterprise centres like Colby, or
it's something which I've signposted to her, because I did some work previously with Colby, so I have signposted her to that. I don't know whether she's looked that up. I was just wondering, because you're kind of in the know that you might know somebody who might be an import. I understand that the whole point of it is to get money into the country and not out, but yes. I just might have a contact.
I mean, I'll have a think about it. I'm and I'll invite others who are in the business support community, if they have any thoughts that are on this call. Yeah, I'll have a think about it.
Lovely, thank you so much. That's really appreciated.
Okay.
I would just say, Lisa, that internationalization is the expression that is used for that. Okay.
I love that.
That's already helpful, because sometimes we don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
There is, we do have a guest speaker on that coming on to our Space to Grow program in very soon. I haven't got the date in front of me, but I'll send you that date. But we also work with Backing Essex Business, which is an Essex County Council funded program. So we might be worth her having a word with them, because Wonderful. They are the font of all knowledge and are there to give business advice as well. So I know you've got Colby, were really good, and we send lots of referrals to Colby, but there's also backing Essex business as well. So we've got a double whammy.
Amazing. Thank you. That's really, really good. That's really good.
I'll send that through to you, Lisa.
Amazing. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very appreciative of that.
Just to then, thanks for that, John. Obviously backing Essex business, there's also an event coming up. It's not necessarily internationalization, that's the word, but it is getting investment ready, so might be useful as well. So the upcoming events are listed here, just a quick. So beginning of April, we have, it's all about protecting and understanding your IP assets, and that's with Q Legal. On the 19th of April, we have started working with corporates, MSD UK. And then on the 26th, we have backing Essex business, getting investment ready. And obviously on the 29th of April, so very, very almost last day of April, well, not quite, but we have the next FE. So it's also launched now on Eventbrite, so you can already book your slot or book your ticket and get ready for the next one. And obviously always a reminder, we're also on Slack. So if anybody has any other questions or anything of note, thank you all for sticking. And thank you so much again for Fran and Rosemary for your wonderful talk and all the information. Thank you, Charlotte. And I hope to see you all on the 29th on the next FE.